I was given a landscape challenge, and I kind of failed it. Hey, what's up, you guys? For those of you new to my channel, my name is Nick. I'm a professional photographer. I've been a professional photographer for the last 4 years, and I've kind of been a hobbyist for the last 17 or so, getting my start in high school. Now, what's interesting about this video, and what I mean by I failed the challenge, is the challenge was given to me by Tom O'Neill, which I've done several different compilations with. My most recent one, the 1,000-step challenge, and I'll link that one right up there. But this challenge was interesting. It was to go out and do landscape photography with a 50mm lens. Now, I haven't done landscape photography in about 5 years. My focus has mostly been portraiture with a little bit of street photography and product and magazine work, not really landscape. I haven't really touched landscape at all in about 5 years. So I found the challenge super interesting and something that I really wanted to be involved in, because I think if any of you guys have seen a lot on my channel, you know how much I love the 50mm lens. I have this video here. The Nifty 50 is the X-Wing of lenses, and I'll put one of my Yongnuo 50mm reviews down in the description below. But I have the Yongnuo 50mm f1.8 for both Nikon and Canon, and I'm getting ready to get one for the Sony that's sitting in front of me. The primary camera that I brought out to do that actually was the only camera I brought out, and it's because it used to be my primary video camera, so I didn't really get to shoot with it a whole lot unless I was doing work with clients. And that is my Nikon D5300 with the Yongnuo 50mm 1.8. And you guys might be thinking, that those of you who saw my video about a month ago, where I declared Nikon is dead, I did state that I would still be using this as my primary camera for the time being, and that the Sony was for video. And I'll link that video right up there. So I went out with my Nikon D5300. It's a 24 megapixel camera. It came out about 10 years ago, and the Yongnuo 50mm f1.8 prime. Now, the first place we went to was Poudre Canyon, my wife and I. And Poudre Canyon, I treated a lot as I would treat street photography. I was going in with just the lens, just my camera, just a very basic kit setup to kind of see what I can get. I'm going to show a couple of those images I got here on the screen real quick. Now, as you can see, I don't really have the eye for landscape photography that I did about 5 years ago, or at least I didn't on the trip to Poudre Canyon. And so we were planning a trip to Pagosa Springs. We just got back today, actually. Today is May 21st. This video should be coming out on the 23rd, so you can kind of see about how far behind I am with this. But so we went to Pagosa Springs for about a week, and in Pagosa Springs, they're pretty much completely surrounded by national forest. And one of the first stops we made was Treasure Falls. Now, I'm not going to show those photos just yet because it's one of my failure points. That I want to talk about. But we hit a bunch of different hikes up there and a lot of different scenery. And some of the problems that I ran into with the 50mm are kind of what I expected to run into. You can't get those really huge vistages and those beautiful panoramics. You have to really choose your shots a lot more strictly, in a sense, than you would with a wide-angle lens. You know, when you're looking at this photo I have on the screen right here, this is up on Reservoir Hill. Now, the 50mm was actually perfect for this because I wanted to capture the valley, but there was 2 trees right next to me, and a wide angle would have captured those trees and it would have totally thrown off the perspective of the photo, and I don't think I would have been as happy with these 2 photos that I'm going to show as I did with the 50mm. From Reservoir Hill, we actually hit another one called Turkey Springs, and I got some really great 50mm shots out in Turkey Springs as well, and I'm going to throw those up on the screen as we talk about it a little bit. Now, the great thing about that, again, the 50mm was perfect for that because it was zoomed in enough where I could cut off the road, I can cut off the signages, I can cut off the fence that was in the way, and you just really see those sweeping valleys and those beautiful mountains with a little bit of snow on them in the background. And so the 50mm was great for that. The 50mm was also great when I really wanted to pick something out. Now I was shooting at about f11, f16, and a few shots at f22. Past f16, really the images aren't as sharp as I would have liked them to be. Now, the third part of this journey, we actually rented an ATV and went on a 2.5-hour excursion up the mountain on these crazy trails. Up to the top of a mountain, essentially. And from up there, again, the 50mm was perfect for that. It provided enough zoom for me to really capture the vistage that I wanted to capture without those trees right in the foreground or you being able to see the side of the mountain or anything like that. It was really framed a certain way I wanted. Now, while we were in Pagosa, I had brought along my Amazon Basics tripod, and I'll link my video to that one right up there. It is a super lightweight tripod, and it did the job just fine for all the hiking that we were doing and our ATV excursion. And we ended up going on 4 or 5 hikes in total while we were up there, and I got a lot of great images. Again, I just got home today, so I haven't been able to go through and edit all of them, so I only have about 6 or 7 photos to show you in all from this trip, but we are going to do an entire video on my landscape experience out in Pagosa Springs, because again, it's been about 5 years since I've done landscape photography, and it's been about 7 years since I've shot a waterfall. Well, up until this last week. See, where I failed at this is, again, the 50mm prime, especially on a crop-bodied camera, where it acts like an 85mm at that point. I didn't bring my 35mm, which would have acted like a 50mm. I don't know if that was in the spirit of the challenge or not, but I decided on the 50mm prime on the D5300 crop sensor. And I have to say that the biggest challenge I ran into is when I wanted to get up close to something and capture the entire thing, or I wanted a sweeping panoramic. Now, we hadn't been down to Pagosa Springs in about 4 years. I hadn't seen Treasure Falls in about 6 or 7 years. I think it was probably the last waterfall I actually did shoot. And I wasn't going to go down there without a wide-angle lens. So the lens I actually brought was my Sigma 10 to 20mm f3.5. I do have a review on this video. I'm going to link that one right up there. And to be 100% honest, I didn't want to break this lens out. I wanted to stick to the spirit of 50mm that the entire challenge. That was my jump back into landscape. My return to landscape was the 50mm challenge, but being up and close to that 105-foot waterfall, here, I'm going to show you the 2 photos I got of it with my 50mm. See how it had to be 2 different photographs? Now that was on a tripod, that was about f22. Now I'm going to show you what my Sigma 10 to 20mm was able to capture. And that right there is the photo that made me fail the challenge. Now, I did break this lens out on other parts of our hikes. When we were top of the Reservoir Hill, I took a couple photos with this. Now, I really wanted to capture some of those panoramics. And in order to capture those panoramics, you can't use a 50mm prime. I mean, you can, but it's a lot more difficult and a lot more hands-on than what I'm capable of with landscape photography at this time. Now, there is a way to put it on a tripod, take your shot, take your shot, take your shot, take your shot, and stitch them, but that's something that's not within my technical skill base anymore. It is something that I was able to do when I was younger. It's not something I've done in a really long time because I've just invested in lenses that will essentially do the same thing for me. Now, we might go do a video where we experiment with panoramics with a 50mm or a 35mm and stitching and seeing if we can work that out, because there's a real nuance to it in the editing when you have to stitch them together, make sure all the lighting is correct, all the contrast is correct, and everything matches up well. Something, again, that is out of my technical base now. So what do I think of Tom O'Neill's 50mm challenge? I think that the challenge was great. It was spectacular. It really made me start thinking more about Ansel Adams. Now, Ansel Adams is an American photographer, a landscape photographer who shot large format primarily in black and white. If you don't know him, go look him up. His work is absolutely stunning and amazing. Ansel Adams was one of my inspirations when I first got into landscape photography. And I have to say that, you know, the F64 Society, which was a group that he founded, inspired a lot of my earlier work. Really high f-stops, making sure that everything is sharp, everything is in focus, and you kind of take photos of mundane, everyday things and you try to bring out the beauty in them. So it was a lot of fun taking the 50mm out and trying that. If you guys are interested, I do have a short coming up later this week about Ansel Adams and kind of my journey back into landscape photography. So make sure you guys are subscribed so you know right when that is uploaded. Again, at 1,000 subscribers, which is like 19 people away now, I'm giving away a Nikon F80 or an N80 for my American friends, 35mm film camera. Maybe this will be the series that inspires you, but Ansel Adams was an American landscape photographer who took some of the most beautiful pieces of landscape photography in black and white, like ever. That's really what got me motivated into landscape photography when I first started out. Now, my first camera came from my grandfather. He was a photographer. I don't know if you can see them, but there's some photos of some hot air balloons behind me, and those were taken by him in the 70s. And he had prints done that look really cool, but he was primarily a portrait photographer, and I always liked landscape growing up, and then I kind of evolved into cityscape and then street photography, and then from street photography I got into portraits, and portraits is primarily what work I do now, which is why most of our videos focus on portraiture. If you guys want to see more landscape videos, let me know it in the comments below. I am happy to make more landscape videos. I do plan on going out and shooting more landscape, so if you guys want to go on those adventures with me, we're going to Alaska in August, so that would make some pretty dope content if you ask me. So this is the end of my video. I'm going to show that waterfall photo again, because that is my favorite photo of this entire challenge, was the waterfall photos that I got with the 10 to 20mm, which to me that means I failed the 50mm challenge, but I don't think that was the intent of Tom when he let out this challenge. So I'm going to throw that up on the screen real quick one last time, and while that's up there, I'm going to ask you guys to like and comment, share the video if you really enjoyed it. If you want to see more landscape stuff, let me know down in the comments below. If you guys want to critique my landscape work, again, it's been a really long time since I've done it, so I'm happy to get some constructive criticism down in the comments below. If you got any tips for me, definitely hit me up down below. It's been a really long time since I've gone out and done landscape, and I'm happy to hear what any of you landscape photographers have to say. It would actually bring me a lot of joy to get a little bit of constructive criticism so that next time I go out, or at least when I make it to Alaska, I get some amazing photos. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. I do have merch available. It's down in the description below. All that money goes back into the channel. That's how we got that camera. That's how we got all this stuff behind us now. And that's how we finance a lot of these expeditions that we're going to be doing in the future. So thank you guys again so much. I'll catch you all on the flip side. Bye.